Thanks. Claudia Grasso has been a San Diego Deputy District Attorney for 18 years. She is the Assistant Chief of the Family Protection Division, which prosecutes cases of domestic violence, child physical and sexual abuse, elder abuse, internet crimes against children, and animal abuse. She has prosecuted and tried a variety of felony cases, including domestic violence and infanticide, child molest cases warranting life in prison, torture, attempted murder, elder abuse, and domestic violence. Additionally, Claudia serves as the San Diego Domestic Violence Council President, a collaborative of service providers, law enforcement, and healthcare workers whose goal is to eradicate domestic violence, provide service to domestic violence victims and survivors, and prevent domestic abuse in San Diego County via education. She's also the District Attorney's Office Coordinator of the Domestic Violence High Risk Team, which identifies domestic violence victims who are at risk for lethality and provide wraparound services. Being bilingual and bicultural, Claudia regularly does outreach to the Spanish media and community on domestic violence, sexual assault, and child molest, and has taught throughout the county on these topics. She received her Juris Doctorate from the University of San Diego Law School and EDM from Harvard University Graduate School of Education, and a Bachelor of Arts from the University of California of Los Angeles. It's an honor to have her speak to us today, as it has been to have Reverend Dr. Parker. Claudia?
Thank you so much, Rosemary, and thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Parker. It's amazing that you truly do learn something every day. I have been working with domestic violence victims and in this world for 18 years, and I had never looked at it with the lens of Bible teachings and religious faith. It's just something that something that makes sense to me now after hearing you speak. Thank you so much. As Rosemary said, I am actually now the interim chief of the Family Protection Division of the District Attorney's Office. I have been a prosecutor for 18 years, and most of those years I have been prosecuting cases of domestic violence. I'm also the president of the Domestic Violence Council, and as you know, my life is working with victims and hoping to eradicate domestic violence via prevention and teaching like this. Why am I so passionate? I grew up in a Mexican family in East Los Angeles in the 70s and the 80s. And anybody who is familiar with East Los Angeles knows that it's a very, very poor, or at least when I grew up, a very poor community. We grew up very poor, gang infested. It was a lot of violence, but I must say that I grew up with a lot of love. I had not only my immediate family, but my extended family that lived there. One aspect, though, of my childhood was the reality of domestic abuse. And you'll hear me use domestic abuse and domestic violence interchangeably, because and the reason is domestic violence is one facet of domestic abuse. Domestic abuse can be physical, emotional, psychological, financial. There are so many facets of abuse. And so the umbrella is domestic abuse, and violence is one aspect of it. So back to my family. We are a big Mexican family, a lot of love, but very male dominated. And there was domestic abuse going on in my extended family. And we knew about it. Everybody knew about it. And it was excused. I grew up with having aunts tell other aunts, just come on, just make his dinner a lot earlier, or just, don't egg him on, or you know how he gets. And everyone knew this reality. Us kids grew up knowing that this was going on, but it was life. That it was just life. You never reported it. You never told anybody outside of the family what happens. It's just something that happened within the family, and it was pretty much either not talked about or swept under the rug or excused. And once being a bit removed from that, I realized, wait a minute, why? And it was all, it was male perpetrators on females. But as Dr. Parker said, domestic abuse can be same sex, can be females, female perpetrators on male victims. But the majority, when I grew up, it was male perpetrators on female victims. And so looking back and thinking, my gosh, it doesn't have to be this way. And the reality is, when I am in our Latino communities and I speak to victims, the mentality is still old school, as I call it. Some victims, still feel that they have to mind their husbands, ask permissions for, from their husbands. And it's not just the Mexican Latino community, it's many cultural communities out there, as my colleagues who are in, work with these victims know. And so that is why I'm here, because it's personal. It's something that I'd like to change. It's something that I'd like to educate. It's something that we want to work together to help victims. Now, it's a problem in San Diego. In 2019, there were over 17,000 calls for service, and that means 911 calls related to domestic violence. 15 domestic violence related homicides. And now we're in COVID. 2020, COVID hit. We're still gathering statistics, but from what we can see so far, there was a 3% increase of cases submitted to the DA's office. However, our office, our collaborative fear of all those cases that have gone unreported. What is the phenomenon happening right now during COVID? Many have lost their jobs or are working from home. Many of our children are being educated at home via a computer. Parents have had to shoulder that education because it's just not working with the video Zoom or whatever platform. The mandated reporters that usually kept a watch on our children are coaches. There's no sports going on. Our teachers, our after school care, all of those that kind of kept an eye out for our children, eye out for our victims, are not having that contact. And so victims of domestic abuse are barricaded with their abusers who are watching what they're doing. They're not leaving the homes. They're monitoring phones. They don't have those outlets as taking the kids to school, going to work. Now with the phenomena also that everything can get delivered, right? You don't even have to go to the market. You don't even have to go to Target anymore. And so our victims are truly, and again, our churches are closed. Thank God that we're now opening a little bit more. But again, all those places where our victims traditionally get help were closed for so long. And so we have our victims that are barricaded with their abusers. And you throw alcohol in the mix, you throw drug use in the mix, because those are two coping mechanisms for our reality, and we get trouble. What we are hearing from our community partners and from 911 dispatch and from our rabies doctors is that the severity of the injuries has markedly increased. So the babies, the kids that our rabies doctors are seeing in the ER are definitely more dangerous, more imminent, more definitely the injuries are more profound than before. The victims that are calling finally for help on the hotlines, the calls are more urgent. They're more just severe in their nature. So the largest obstacle during COVID has been, how do we get resources to victims? If they're barricaded with their abusers, how can all of us reach our victims? And it's been through platforms like this, through education, through grassroots efforts, being in the trenches, connecting. How are you doing today? Just kind of just trying to let people know that we are still here. Services may look different, but we are still here. I also want to touch upon the reality that happens with our immigrant and refugee victims as well. So they already start off with barriers. They don't speak the language many times. They are not acclimated to the culture. They don't know how to navigate the system. And so perpetrators use this to exert their power and control. We see this day in and day out. If you call police, you're just going to get deported. If you call police, you're undocumented, so you'll never see your children again. And they use this lack of documentation, this lack of just the ability to navigate the system as power and control to keep them silent. So what is our response? What do we do? Again, it's platforms like this. The Domestic Violence Council, we're so fortunate and blessed to have a committee called the Binational Committee that addresses domestic violence within the immigrant, refugee, and asylum seeker community. And for example, next month, we're going to be hosting a general meeting in the DV Council that addresses working with Latino community. And we're going to bring an immigration attorney that's going to talk about what's the realities, of immigration. Will you get deported? No. For calling the police? No. Things like that to get the message out. We're also having the first ever DV Essentials all in Spanish. We traditionally have an all-day, DV Essentials education with various perspectives on domestic violence. And this is the first time that we're going to do it all in Spanish to invite our community partners, but also our victims, not only in San Diego, but in our border towns in Mexico, in Tijuana and Mexicali, where we're seeing a lot of this increase again in domestic violence. I also have to give a shout out to our partners, Licensed to Freedom, who are community-based in East County, who have done an amazing job as well, working with Middle Eastern community. Again, many of these are refugees that are coming to our country, not really realizing, how to navigate the system, what to do. So they help not only the victims, but perpetrators as well with education, with these are our laws. This is how you navigate them. You don't hit your spouse. You don't hit your children, and teaching them new ways to walk away when they're frustrated and coping with stressors. So what are the red flags and the warning flags? It's not always easy to tell that when a relationship is going to become abusive. As all of you who have been in a relationship, in the beginning, everything is wonderful. You get those butterflies in your stomach, you're just happy, you're happy to be with that partner. And many perpetrators, many abusers are perfectly, they seem normal in the beginning stages of a relationship. And we noticed that the possessive, the control starts very subtly. It doesn't appear just overnight out of nowhere. It just kind of takes root. And every relationship is different. However, a common thread is this power and control, which can take form in physical violence, emotional, psychological, financial abuse. So what are some of the red flags? Showing jealousy and possessiveness masqueraded with, I love you so much, I just want to keep you to myself. I don't want you to go to your friends just because I just love you so much and I want to be with you all the time. Don't go with your family because I want you to be with me. Control of money and job and education. Again, the masqueraded with love, with saying, you know what, you don't have to work, you don't have to go to school. I will take care of you. I will give you money. I will help you. And that's how it starts. The threatening, the looks, the stares that the victim is very well aware of. preventing a victim from making their own decisions. And that's one thing that not only do we work with victims in the DV Council, but we work with who we call survivors, because many times our victims come out of this situation. They're finally safe, but now what, right? Many times they don't have a skill, they need to work, but decisions were always made for them. So now they have to learn to be assertive. They have to learn to stand on their 2 feet and start making decisions for themselves and for their children. And we have a wonderful program, it's called Leap to Success, that offers these classes of assertiveness and empowerment for victims to become these survivors and be able to move on. Another red flag is, accusing the victim of being a bad parent or threatening to take the children away. Destroying property, threatening to hurt and kill pets. My division in the DA's office just recently started prosecuting animal abuse. Why? Because we saw the common thread of domestic violence and animal abuse. That is a way to control a victim, by threatening to harm their beloved pets, or sometimes kill the beloved pets. That is, they retain that power and that control. There's intimidation with guns and knives and weapons, pressuring to have sex when the victim doesn't want to, pressuring to use drugs and alcohol. Those are red flags in a relationship for a victim. However, how can we tell, right, if someone's a victim? And many times you cannot, but there are certain things that we have seen. For example, the obvious is, seeing our victims completely covered head to toe in clothing. It's a hot 80-degree day, but yet they're wearing long sleeves, dark sunglasses at night. That could be a sign. Having to ask their permission of their partner for every move. Oh, I do want to join this meeting. I just have to ask, my husband if it's okay. Or I have to check if this is okay if I go here with you. Making excuses when the abuser gets a little out of control. They have too much to drink at a party and become abusive, or become verbally, out of control, and saying, oh, they're just under a lot of stress. It's just, they have so much on their plate right now. He normally, or she normally, is not like this. Also, the eyes. You can tell expression. When you look at someone and they're speaking to you, but yet their eyes keep shifting to their partner to seek approval. Or nervous or nervous kids who are trying to be kids but keep looking at a certain parent to make sure that they're doing the right thing. Those can all be signs that something is going on. So what do we do? Safety plan. First and foremost is, not all victims are ready to leave an abusive relationship. And while that can be very frustrating for us trying to help a victim, the best we can do is listen without judgment. We cannot tell a victim, oh, you should just leave your partner. Why are you still with him? Why are you still with her? That's not the way it works. You're going to alienate that victim, and she will not, or he will not, want to speak to you if they feel that they are being judged. So there's many factors why a victim is just not ready to leave. It could be financial. It could be who's going to take care of the kids. It could be they love their partner. Simple as that. So what can we do? If there is a victim that's just not ready to leave, offer them safety tips. They have to come up with a safety plan just to keep them safe, to make sure that they are safe. So what are some safety things that they can do? Identify areas in the house where there are no weapons, because if a situation were to escalate and become violent, they could run to that area and there are no weapons around. During an argument or violence, don't run towards the children, because you don't want your children to get caught up in the violence. If possible, always wear clothing with pockets because you can always store a cell phone in a pocket should you need to call for help right away. Develop a safety word. Some people call it a code word that you teach your children, you teach neighbors, family, friends, that if you utter this safety word, it is code for call 911 right away, I am in danger. Teach your children how to call for help, how to dial 911, and what to say. If a victim has their own car, keep a packed bag in the trunk where you can keep clothing and cash and copies of identification in case you have to leave right away. Make sure there's always gas in that tank. Don't wear anything around your neck that can be used for strangulation. Once a victim is strangled, statistics show that she or he is 700% more likely to be killed. Strangulation is taking it to the next level. It's a very personal form of violence. So we ask, don't wear necklaces, scarves, anything that can be used to strangle. Call 911, obviously, if there's an emergency. But a good place, a good reference to start for resources is the domestic violence hotline, the national hotline that when you call, they then transfer you to localized services. And that number is 1-800-799-7233. And it's a wonderful place to start. Now, what if the victim is ready to leave? Statistics show that the most dangerous time in a relationship is when a victim is ready to leave. Most of the DV homicides that I have prosecuted have occurred when the victim had decided to leave the relationship and either obtain a restraining order or was in the process of leaving when they got killed. It's a very dangerous time. So what can we do? First and foremost is safety. Safety has to be the primary concern. I emailed Rosemary the most up-to-date comprehensive guide of resources existing in San Diego, and she can definitely share it with all of you. There you will find one of the things that we're so proud of this year in the collaborative in the DA's office is that we formed the Southern California Safe Shelter Collaborative. Prior, victims had to call 5 different places. Is there a bed available for shelter? No. Is there a bed with children? No. Finally, our shelters combined forces, as I call them, into one central portal. So victims only have to call one place and there will be directed to a shelter where they can go immediately. But you will see on this resource guide help and directives to get restraining orders, medical assistance, legal assistance, shelter, food, clothing, transportation. We even have a little shelter for pets. So if a domestic violence victim were to flee with their, beloved puppy, there is a place for the puppy can go because shelters don't always take pets. But that puppy will be safe in this shelter. In this pet shelter. Meanwhile, the victim can get back on his or her feet. So those are the things that we can do to help each other out. For more information, please just Google San Diego Domestic Violence Council. We have all of our up-to-date trainings and guides. Everything is on that website. Also, the DA's office has developed an amazing website during COVID. It's www.preventdv1.org. There, again, there's a lot of resources listed there. There's even a self-test the victims can take to see where they rank in the danger in their relationship. There are also a site for perpetrators on just giving them tips. If you get to that boiling point, what do you do? How can you just walk away? What are coping mechanisms? Because again, many of these families that we prosecute, they end up together. So we are shifting how we look at families in that we are not out to, some perpetrators need to go to prison just because of the severity of what they do. But some do not, where we're not here to lock them up and throw away the key. It's what can we teach you? What mechanisms can we teach you? So someday perhaps this family can be salvaged and go back and be loving without violence. And so there are tips and safety plans on that too. And of course, I'm always here. If there's anything you need, Rosemary has my email, but it's claudia.grasso, as you see my name up there, at SDCDA, the acronym for San Diego County DA.org. Definitely, I work with wonderful, wonderful partners, as will be speaking in the breakout rooms. I recognize, Alberta Saavedra from North County Lifeline and others that are just a wonderful and amazing resources to help victims. And thank you so much for what you do and for having me here and for getting the word out. I am indebted. And please don't hesitate to call on me.